What got me interested in Bigfoot and was my son, not me particularly, although I was always a little curious, as everybody else has been, of these myths of, like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, all these, and it's quite universal. But my son became very fascinated with Bigfoot at an early age, maybe 6 or 7 years old. I used to think because I didn't take him to church as I used to be taken when I was a kid, that he didn't get swept up with Jesus and the Son of God and the Virgin Mary and all that. Instead, he became fascinated with the possible existence of something like a missing link between us and early man, or primitive man, or a primitive man. And we live south of the Adirondacks in Saratoga Springs, and when we camp and fish up there, my son would wake me in the middle of the night while we're camping in a campsite in a tent, and he'd say, someone was going to the men's room, and he'd wake me and say, "Dad, that's a Bigfoot." And I said, no, that's just a man going to the men's room. And he'd wake me a little bit, "Oh, Dad, there's another Bigfoot." And anybody that was moving in the middle of the night was always a Bigfoot. And eventually, even when we were riding in the car going through the Adirondacks and surrounded by mountains and forest and all, he asked, "Do you think there could be a Bigfoot in there?" Meaning the woods that we're passing. And I said, "Well, yeah, there could be. I didn't know. So unless I had proof that they don't exist, there was a possibility that they could exist." And his little head would rise above the car door and look out the window. As we were passing, he'd look deep into the woods to see if there was a Bigfoot. He could glean a Bigfoot. Well, he was a very precocious, great kid, intelligent, curious, and loved fishing. And so we spent a lot of time out in the wild. And as the fascination grew, my interest grew. And he was in 3rd or 4th grade when I decided, well, what I could do is write a play and put it on in his elementary school, which had a great theater, 600-seat, velvet-seated auditorium, with a great stage and technical equipment. And I had been an actor and acted in some small theaters in New York that were not nearly as good as this elementary school theater. So I wrote a play called Little Bigfoot, and the kids acted in it, and a lot of the mothers showed up to do the costumes, and the fathers showed up to do the lights and the sound, and before long we had a play, and it was such a charge to be back in the theater and working with children who really just wanted to be out on a stage and performing for their peers and even their senior students, junior students. We even had like 15 kindergartners in the production. And then I became curious about transferring the play, because I knew the structure that I wanted, into a novel. And that became quite a challenge, because I thought instead of the limitations within a theater that you would have to, have your entrances and exits and your scenes and all that, that with a novel it could be much more cinematic. You could have it in a home or in a barn or outdoors or in the mountains, anywhere that your imagination will take you. So I wrote a novel of it, and it rounded out to be about 250 or 270 pages. Well, obviously that's not a child's book, And so what I did is I got into editing and cut it down. And went back and read and reread my son's books that he was fascinated with. And I saw how condensed they were, how really wonderfully, in fact, beautifully condensed was the storytelling and the theatricality of it, the drama of it. how it engaged my son, myself, etc. And so I went through and eliminated everything that was not necessary in the novel called Little Bigfoot. Well, I had worked on it, revised it, and went over it, and I sent it out to publishers, and nobody wanted it. And so I came back at it a couple of times. And over the years, I'm talking decades, that I would still go back and revisit it. And I had a fellow in Saratoga do the illustrations, Hud Armstrong, very good guy. I've known him for years now. And he did a second book of mine called A Horse Named Girl. And so it grew out of that early fascination of my son with Bigfoot. And I picked it up myself. I'm not certain that something resembling mankind doesn't exist, so I can't say for sure that it does or it doesn't. But since no skeletons have been discovered, no carcasses, we can only have rumor, conjecture, myth. And Joseph Campbell did a fantastic job of describing the structure of myth throughout all cultures. Ever since, from Indonesia to America to the Aborigines in Australia, all over. And did incredible research into that. The Hero of 1,000 Faces, The Journey's Hero, etc. And that's really what it is. But what I really liked about the play, as well as the novel, is the child, Jamie Jack's, devotion to this strange animal. I mean, he's living alone with his grandfather, without his parents, at that time. And suddenly this little Bigfoot comes stumbling into his grandfather's barn. And his grandfather dog wakes him up. And that's the beginning of the novel. And then the sweep of the whole drama, the discovery, the danger, the escape, taking his friend back to the mountains where he comes from and reuniting him with his mother. And Jamie is eventually reunited with his mother. So there's a running parallel, but in a close association, but nothing exact. And that's, excuse me, that's about the essence of the beginning, the middle, and the end of Little Bigfoot. And so I have this novel now. And I've also recorded it for an audio. I've published it in just a printout version, as well as a hardbound version. And on the website, you can see that the voice is in sync with the page turning. And so children who may be reluctant to read, but are fascinated with Bigfoot, may very well want the narrative read to them as they're going through page after page after page, and then become much more aware of how to read a book, because it's got the essence of a book, and the story is in essence a novel. And so I hope you enjoy it, and tell your friends, and spread the word, and join littlebigfoot.club, and share your opinions or discoveries or ideas or stories about Bigfoot, and meet kids all over the world, because everybody is kind of fascinated with this mythical creature, and to some extent some people just dismiss it out of hand, but they dismiss a lot of things out of hand. So until we know for certain, it'll remain a myth. And out of myth comes great stories. Look at the Greeks with Homer, with theater, with literature, with short stories, with vignettes, with small stories. It's all story. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed it, writing it with my son, the play, and then the novel, and spread the word. Thank you.